Hello everyone, it's Christina from Our Wood Home. I'm going to be showing you the preserving garden in today's video. I showed you the harvest gardens previously, and I'm breaking this up into two videos just so that it's not super long and I can kind of focus on each garden specifically. So where I'm standing now, I'm about to go into the preserving garden, and everything that's growing here is going to be either dried, frozen, canned, maybe pickled, for consumption throughout the fall and winter. So let's take a look at what's growing in here. Something we have had on this garden before is just some type of fence, mainly as wind protection because it gets very windy here and our plants were getting a lot of damage from those winds. So we always had, well, not always, over the last several years, we had some kind of barrier. It was usually wooden lattice, and it worked pretty well, but we had a bad storm in 2022 and it damaged most of our lattice, so we had to do something different this year. And I would have loved to have built a fence. Let me rephrase that. I would have loved if my husband had built a fence and I had helped him with it, but lumber's expensive and that would have been time consuming, and our soil is so rocky and difficult to work with. So I came up with an alternative, which is this wood slat snow fence, and I think it looks so nice. You'd never know it was snow fence. It's kind of a reddish color now, so I'm hoping that it'll eventually fade and look a bit more pale and natural looking over the years, but I think it looks really nice right now. And we just secured it with metal T-posts that my husband just pounded into the ground, and then we stretched out the fence across it and secured it with some wire. So not only is this going to provide a little bit of wind protection, it's also going to be pest protection. Not so much for our dog, but neighbor dogs don't understand boundaries because we don't have a fence dividing our properties, and they will come in and sniff around, and I don't want them to wreck any of the plants accidentally, so it's a dual purpose fence, maybe a triple purpose because I think it just looks nice too. Last year, or maybe the year before, I can't remember when I did my last garden video, but you probably remember this garden, which I called our main vegetable garden. And I also had the Three Sisters garden in this general area. And you can see I've expanded that. So each separate plot here is about 200 square feet, from this one down to here, and then from here down to there. So about 400 square feet total. And we've got this cute little gate, which was actually the screen door at the front of our house. It was full size, and then my husband cut it in half for me because I thought that would be so cute, and we were getting rid of the door anyways. So it's a cute little garden gate now. And it doesn't stay open on its own, so I use a pitchfork in the ground to prop it open so that I can come in, and Bet can come in with me. So right now, in between the two gardens, I've got some old landscape fabric just to help with the weed suppression, because the lawn tractor wouldn't fit in here to cut the grass anyways, and it's pretty narrow. Our plan is to put some type of stone down instead, not like a gravel, but like a patio stone. I've got a cute little table and chair set up over there because I need to take a lot of breaks when I'm gardening, and I was just sitting on the wood, but I'd like somewhere nice to sit, so I've got that set up. And there are some small sunflowers growing behind it, so hopefully they make it big enough this summer to provide maybe a little bit of shade. We also have our compost bins here, and right now the access point into this section of garden is around and behind, which isn't ideal, but since the composters were already full, we couldn't move them this year, so we're going to do some relocating for next spring. Since the sunflowers will have bloomed and died over there, we're just going to move the compost bins over there across that little short piece, so then I can walk in this whole area and it will just be so much easier. And of course we'll have the nice stone. Okay, let's take a look what's growing in here. I should say, like with all my other garden videos, this is just real life gardening. Yes, there's weeds. My rows are crooked. Things don't always look great, but it is what it is. It's real life. I tried to weed the garden in advance of this video, but we had so much rain, everything just took off again. With that out of the way, let's take a look at what's growing in here. So I've got 3-ish rows of potatoes. 4-ish rows. I say ish because they just fill in between the rows, which is fine because they're a tuber plant, so they're gonna grow wherever they please. But here's the potatoes. I just grew these from a bag of potatoes that I saved years ago. I saved some potatoes from that bag, planted them, they grew, we ate some, I saved some, and I just have been continuing to save potatoes for seed ever since. They're just a white potato. Here are some onions, which you'll see throughout the garden. They were left over from last year and just took off. This section is supposed to be parsnip, and there is none. So I'm trying to think of what I could put here in its place that will be able to grow and mature before the end of the growing season. In this garden, we also have 2 little clumps of strawberry plants, which we did not plant, but I think they might have just grown from either the composter or some seeds that birds dropped. I'm not sure. But since we are going to be making a berry patch next year, we're going to try to relocate these strawberries to that area. I did a different kind of layout with the garden this year, so I used stakes to just mark off where I wanted things, and then I tied some fabric scraps between them just so that we could clearly see where we can walk and where we can't walk. This section is supposed to have bell peppers. There's a rogue potato from last year, and the bell peppers are not doing that great. I started them from seed, and there's some that are obviously very teeny tiny, but then there's a couple, like that one. It's a decent size, it's just not nearly as big as it should be, so I think maybe I started the seeds too late. This is supposed to be beets. I think there are a couple growing in here, not very many. This was grown from seed tape, which was my first experience with seed tape, so maybe I did something wrong and that's why they're not looking great. But if they don't grow, it's not the end of the world. I might just do a really late sowing of a fast growing variety so that we can at least have some to pickle and can for the winter. This is our tomato section. There's 20 plants growing here. They're all in various stages of growth. This one's kind of smaller, but the 2 behind it are a little bit bigger. And these were of course grown from seed. They're not doing as well as the other plants in my harvest garden. They're all sown at the same time, same variety of seed, but I think maybe the plants in the harvest garden are doing so well because I had put a bunch of chicken manure in those gardens. So they were able to get all that extra nutrients. Let's move on to the other part of the preserving garden, which is behind me here. This section I'm very proud of because about half of it was here last year, and then the other half I worked on last summer actually. I put down a bunch of bark and sticks and grass clippings. If you're interested in a more in-depth video about that, let me know and I can definitely do that. Once I had all that material on the grass, I covered it all with a tarp so that the weeds wouldn't grow all during the summer and the spring, and that it would just be less work to prepare for vegetables. So this spring I took off the tarp and we actually ended up getting a ton of free soil and mulch, which was great. Everything here is going to be preserved in some way. I have some cabbage plants that are doing poorly. And of course, more marigold and dill. Funny story, when I was sowing all of these marigold and dill seeds, I had just stuffed them all in my apron pocket and then walked around all the gardens just scattering them. I kind of felt like the story of Johnny Appleseed, but with flower seeds. It was a lot of fun, actually. I really enjoyed doing that. This is kind of hard to film, but here are zucchini and I think acorn squash or buttercup squash. I don't remember the name of the seed. David got me some seeds for Valentine's Day, and that was one of them, and I just don't remember the name. So I'm really surprised at how bushy these are. I only planted 4 plants, I think, 2 of each, and it looks like way more than that. So yesterday the vines were coming out over the wood barrier. They were going this way, and I didn't want them to be taking over the garden. So we came up with this solution as not so much a sun shelter, but just a place for the plants to vine and climb, and hopefully we can redirect them upwards instead of outwards. Once all the flowers have opened up and once they start turning into fruit, I'm going to be coming in and pruning, just so that the plant can focus on ripening just a few fruit instead of a lot that are on the smaller side. I purposefully kept some paths open in this garden so that it was easier for us to walk through, and I'm really glad I did that. Over in this little section, supposed to be some carrots. I think we see some that are coming in. Carrot there, some carrots over there. Very exciting. Across from the carrots, we have scarlet runner beans. I might regret doing these beans on such a small trellis, but I hope not. To make the trellis, I just had these 2 pieces of wire, it's like a grid pattern. I think it's for use in the garden. I don't know. They were just in our shed, so I just propped them up together and made this little tent structure. And I had to tie string or fabric to the corners because I kept walking by and scraping myself on this. It's very sharp. Moving on, we've got pumpkin here. I can't remember what type of pumpkin this is. Again, it's seeds my husband got me, and I think it's a pie pumpkin, which will be fun to grow. When I first planted all of these seeds, I was a little worried because of the boring beetle. From what I can tell, when you have a vine boring beetle, it's kind of an infestation, and you shouldn't plant anything that it might eat for 2 or 3 years, just to make sure they're all out of the soil. So I took a chance planting all of these, and last year it destroyed all of my squash, pumpkin, cucumber, zucchini, everything. It was very upsetting. We've got some more corn here. Corn is my favorite vegetable, and I was really happy when I grew it last year and it all survived and it tasted delicious. So we planted, I think this might actually be less corn than last year. Hopefully it's still a good harvest, but we planted corn here. This is just corn, yellow corn that you can eat as it is. And the popping corn is across the yard. Yeah, so these plants are looking nice and healthy. And then back here we have, we call them mystery beans because my husband's former coworker gave us these beans, but he didn't tell us what they were called. So we just called them mystery beans, but that kind of just sounds not very nice, to be calling a food a mystery food. So I did come up with a name for them. Without going into the whole long backstory, my family calls me Gween, Gween, and I decided to call these beans Gween beans, which I think is really cute and funny. And I haven't told my family that that's what I'm going to call them, but I know that my family will think that's really funny. So to trellis the beans, I just have these triangular shaped supports that David made me a number of years ago. And I think he intended for them to go the other way. And I did use them the other way for something else, but this way works a little bit better for the beans because there is nothing to support them if I were to do it the other way. So in order to make sure this didn't tip backwards, I just staked some wooden stakes behind them to help with the support. Thank you so much for watching part 2 of my July garden video updates. I hope that you found it interesting. Do you have a preserving garden and a harvest garden at your property? Is this something you've heard of before? I definitely can't take credit for this idea. It came from Melissa K. Norris of Pioneering Today. She's also here on YouTube, and I listen to her podcast a lot, and she mentioned that in one of her videos or podcasts. I can't remember which one. But anyways, I thought that was just such a great idea, so I decided to implement that for our property. In the description of this video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the squash vine boring beetle and what I did to hopefully get ahead of that this year so that it doesn't damage all of my plants. I'm not an expert in this. I've just done some research, and based on what I learned, I applied that. So as I said, hopefully it all works. Only time will tell. If you missed part 1 of my garden updates, I'll have that linked on the screen so you can check that out. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.